V8s are coming. That's not a rumor. That's not a headline from a tabloid. That's Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the president of the FIA, speaking to journalists in a private room in Miami this weekend. And he said it like it was already done, because behind the scenes, it pretty much is. The FIA president made it crystal clear in Miami that Formula One is heading back to V8 engines by 2031 at the latest. And here's the wild part: the manufacturers cannot block it. The FIA rules already give the governing body the authority to push through major engine changes without needing approval from Mercedes, Ferrari, Honda, or anybody else. Ben Sulayem is even aiming for 2030, 1 year earlier, because the pressure outside the sport is getting louder every single week. Fans, insiders, and even long-time sponsors are all demanding a return to engines that actually sound and feel like Formula One again. And think about the timing here. Just 4 races into what many are already calling the most chaotic regulation era F1 has ever seen. Drivers are frustrated, fans are cancelling subscriptions, and races are turning into battery management contests instead of flat-out wheel-to-wheel action. Then, suddenly, in the middle of Miami weekend, the FIA president announces the replacement engine plan like the current direction is already scrapped. That is not random, that is a huge signal. And to understand why the V8 bombshell landed in Miami this weekend, you have to look at what the 2026 engine really is and why it created so much backlash so fast. The new power unit runs on an almost 50-50 split between combustion power and electric energy, and that balance has already sparked serious controversy inside the paddock. That setup means around half of the car's performance comes from the combustion engine, while the other half depends on battery power. On paper, it sounds modern and balanced, but once the cars actually hit the track, the whole thing started falling apart fast. The battery only stores 4 megajoules of energy, yet the cars can use up to 9 megajoules every single lap. The numbers just do not add up, and teams are constantly fighting against a system that drains itself before the lap is even over. The result has been chaos on track. Drivers are lifting off the throttle way before braking zones just to recharge energy. Cars suddenly lose speed halfway down straights when the battery dies, dropping almost 30 kilometers per hour in seconds. At Suzuka, Ollie Behrman slammed into the barrier with a brutal 50G impact after the car ahead unexpectedly lost a huge chunk of power. That moment sent serious concern through the paddock. And only 4 races into this regulation era, the FIA has already stepped in multiple times, changing rules twice, adding extra garage cameras, banning a qualifying tactic Mercedes had been using, and now even discussing changing the 2027 engine balance from 50-50 to 60-40, because the current setup is causing too many headaches. What makes this even crazier is that the whole 50-50 idea was pushed hard back in 2022 when the car industry was fully locked in on electrification. Audi was entering Formula One, Honda was returning, and manufacturers wanted more electric technology tied to the sport. So the FIA followed the trend. But now the market has shifted again. Electric vehicle sales are slowing down in several regions, companies are leaning back toward combustion and hybrid development, and suddenly the engine Formula One built its future around already looks outdated before it even properly arrived. And this is why Ben Sulayem's exact words in Miami hit so hard. He did not say V8 engines were being evaluated. He did not say talks were ongoing or waiting for approval from manufacturers. He flat out said, V8 is coming. It will be done. Then he revealed the real power move behind it all. Under the current regulations, once 2031 arrives, the FIA has the authority to change the engine formula without needing approval from a single power unit manufacturer. Not 4 out of 6, not a majority vote, absolutely none. Ben Sulayem claims the early response from manufacturers has been positive and says the groups are aligned on the idea. But things could get tense once the real voting starts, and billions in long-term engine development are sitting on the table. Teams and manufacturers have already poured huge money into the current hybrid direction, so backing away from it will not be a simple move behind closed doors. Still, the FIA's message right now sounds unusually firm and confident. The situation is basically this: manufacturers can cooperate and get V8 engines in 2030, or they can resist and still end up with them in 2031. Either way, the change appears locked in. That level of certainty from a governing body is rare in Formula One, and when officials speak this confidently, it usually means most of the major decisions have already been made before the public even hears about them. The vote starts looking more like a final formality than an actual battle. Ben Sulayem summed up the V8 argument with 3 simple points: sound, less complexity, lightweight. And every one of those points feels like a direct shot at the current engine era. The sound especially has become a huge issue among longtime fans, because the 2026 style hybrid setup delivers a much quieter and more electric-heavy tone that many people no longer connect with classic Formula One excitement. The combustion engine has basically been buried under layers of energy management systems, harvesting programs, and complicated deployment software that most viewers cannot even follow. Instead of raw engine noise dominating the experience, the electric systems now control huge parts of how the cars behave on track. Compare that to the V8 era from 2006 to 2013, when Formula One cars screamed at 18,000 revolutions per minute and sounded absolutely insane. You could hear those machines from miles away, and fans still talk about that noise today because it gave Formula One a feeling no other series could match. That is not just nostalgia talking. It was part of the sport's identity and a massive reason people fell in love with it in the first place. Then there's the complexity issue. The 2026 engines are so technical that even experienced commentators struggle to explain what's happening live during races. Casual fans get lost trying to understand battery harvesting, deployment windows, and energy targets every lap. Qualifying has slowly started feeling less like a pure driving challenge and more like a software battle between engineers sitting on laptops in the garage. The planned V8 setup would still keep a small level of electrification, but the combustion engine would once again become the star of the show. Drivers could push harder for longer periods, rely less on complicated management systems, and race more aggressively without constantly worrying about battery limits. Even the steering wheels could become less cluttered because drivers would not need to juggle endless settings every few corners. And qualifying? It could finally feel like real flat-out Formula One again. Weight is another major problem hanging over the current regulations. The 2026 power unit is extremely heavy because the battery systems needed for the electric side add serious mass to the cars. Formula One lowered the minimum car weight from 800 kilograms to 768 for 2026, but most teams are still struggling to get anywhere close to that target. Reports claim Red Bull remain around 10 kilograms overweight, while Aston Martin may be carrying even more. A lighter V8 package with minimal electrification would completely change the feel of the cars, improving cornering, tyre performance, and overall racing quality in ways fans would instantly notice on track. But here's the catch. The V8 announcement changes nothing for 2026 to 2029 seasons. Those seasons are still locked into the current engine direction, and that creates a whole new layer of tension behind the scenes. Those upcoming seasons are still locked into the current engine structure, even if some adjustments get made along the way. Formula One could tweak the electrical balance, change deployment rules, or reduce some of the extreme energy harvesting, but the core design is staying in place for now. That means teams still have to survive several years with a system many inside the paddock already see as deeply flawed. Right now, the biggest discussions are focused on 2027. the FIA and manufacturers are reportedly exploring a shift toward a 60-40 split between combustion and electric power instead of the current 50-50 setup. That change would immediately make the cars less dependent on battery harvesting and give drivers more freedom to actually push on track. It would also simplify the overall package and move Formula One a little closer to the aggressive racing style fans have been demanding. It is not a full V8 return yet, but it definitely points the sport back in that direction. Then come 2028 and 2029, which are shaping up to be transition years behind the scenes. During that period, manufacturers would begin serious development work on the next generation V8 engines, while the FIA prepares the technical rules and framework for the new era. Teams will need to figure out everything from chassis design to cooling systems, weight balance, and how much electrification the final package will actually include. That preparation phase could completely reshape how teams divide their budgets and engineering resources over the next few seasons. The real target remains 2030. Loud V8 engines powered by sustainable fuel with only limited electrification involved. Lighter cars, simpler systems, and a much more aggressive sound profile that brings Formula One closer to the style many fans have missed for years. Ben Sulayem even said people will hear about it very soon, which strongly hints that the official engine plan could be announced sooner than expected, not dragged out for years of endless debate. The biggest mystery right now is what minimal electrification actually means in practice. Will combustion make up 90% of the power? Maybe 95%? That number will decide how these future V8 cars sound, perform, and race. And those negotiations between the FIA, manufacturers, and teams are about to become one of the biggest battles in Formula One politics. Here's the real meaning behind the Ben Sulayem announcement. It is somehow even bigger and smaller than the headlines make it seem. Bigger because the FIA president has never spoken this directly about a future engine switch before. In the past, talks about bringing back older-style engines were always framed as ideas, possible options, or topics under review. This time was completely different. He flat out said, "V8 is coming. It will be done." That is not cautious political language. That sounds like a decision already moving through the final stages behind closed doors. The wording matters because it signals something important. The FIA, Formula One management, and at least enough manufacturers appear to already be lined up behind the plan. If the 2030 vote happens, there is a growing feeling inside the paddock that it probably passes. The momentum seems real. But at the same time, the announcement changes absolutely nothing in the short term. The 2026 engine regulations are still locked in, and Formula One still has to deal with all the current problems for several more seasons. That means fans are still stuck watching races shaped by battery saving, energy harvesting, and super clipping, where cars suddenly lose performance halfway down straights because the electrical deployment runs out. The unpopular sound profile is still here too, and many fans have made it clear they miss the aggressive engine noise that once defined Formula One. So no, this announcement does not magically fix Miami, Monaco, or the next few years of racing. What it does fix is the long-term direction of the sport heading into 2030 and beyond. And honestly, the timing says everything. Formula One has spent just 4 races under the new regulations already dealing with what looks like a full-blown rules crisis. Changes were made before Miami, new camera rules appeared with little warning, and technical adjustments are already being discussed almost immediately after launch. Then, right in the middle of all that chaos, the FIA president publicly announces the replacement engine plan at one of the biggest race weekends of the season. That is a massive signal about how much confidence exists in the current path. The fact this happened during the Miami Grand Prix, while Antonelli was building his championship lead and Verstappen was showing Red Bull could still fight near the front, also feels deliberate. The FIA wanted maximum attention when this message dropped, with media, teams and fans all fully focused on Formula One. The V8 is coming. The only question left is, do the manufacturers help build it in 2030, or does the FIA force it through in 2031? Either way, the current hybrid era just got its expiration date. And don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss the latest F1 news.